Hey guys, welcome back to more Magic the Gathering. Today we are playing Cube Draft of my cube, Goldless cube. Um, this pack has a lot of good in it. It's going to play the Hollowed Fountain slightly better than Vivid Creek, even though Vivid Creek is 5 colors. I don't like that it always comes in tapped. This is going to be a lot better with fetches as well, so I'm just going to take that. Oh, look at that, a Wrath. Guess we're playing Control again. Alright, well, I'll take Path here. Quarantine Field is fine. Jace is fine, but I think Path is just better. Okay, we'll take another Fixer. Not super amped about anything else in this pack. And, like, Rugged Prairie, Jeskai is an option, but I think having a fetchable option lends us more potential. Vivid Creek came back. It's an easy pickup. Pyroclasm's good, but I think that having good fixing, especially early on, is just better. I'll take the Ice Hide Golem here. It's like good against aggro. I mean, Duress is fine. I guess Duress is kind of better, maybe? Because if we go Esper, then we're in a pretty good spot with that, sure. Quarantine Field is fine. Probably not main boarding it, but like if we end up in Esper, this is fine. We can play Quarantine Field. It's just not high on my list of things to play. This is actually a tough pack. I really like Mu Yanling. He's just a very good planeswalker, but Dig Through Time is also obviously very good. This is like super controversial, but I'm kind of leaning toward Mu Yanling. I guess we could also take Terramorphic Expanse and then just take whatever comes back. I don't think that both of these won't wheel. That said, blue hasn't really been taken thus far, or hasn't really shown up in our field, so it's likely that someone else is taking it. So we probably want to take one of the blue cards. I'm going to lean toward Mu Yanling. She's just a little bit more proactive, and I think that's going to be slightly better for us. I like Mind Control a fair bit. Reactive proactivity is always good. Wow, Shackles is just excellent, so that's an easy pick. So is Gideon Jura. Dismember is fine, but Gideon Jura is just really great. So we've got like a lot of proactivity, so now we really just need kind of some interaction. I'm going to put Quarantine Field in the sideboard for now, but that may not be permanent. I'm also just going to move these out of the way. As anticipated, Dig Through Time didn't come back. Putrid Goblin is fine. It's really great against aggro, so and against mid-range, really, just as a chump blocker. So I like taking that here. I'm not really into any of these for my deck, but what do I not want to play against? Flash cards are kind of a pain because they require us to have counter magic. They can play around Wraths pretty well. Spawn of Mayhem is obviously very powerful, as is Ruin Raider. I'm just going to take the Vile Redeemer, though. It doesn't seem like if both of these are in the same pack, I don't think anyone's on black aggro, which I'm more worried about than like black-based midrange. If black is in midrange, it's probably paired with green, and I think Vile Redeemer, because of the flash, is more annoying to me. Alright, so we got a couple red-green lands. Which could be okay if we get like a Verdant Catacombs somewhere along the line, and then we splash red for something. This is actually kind of a tough pack. Will Kenrith and Jace the Mind Sculptor are pretty close, but I'm going to take Jace. I just think that cheaper, more gooder, essentially here. I find myself boarding out Will Kenrith a lot when I play him against more aggressive decks, even though he's very, very good against mid-range, and that's like certainly a reason to play him. I'm hoping to wheel like the Noxious Gearhulk here. Though I think that's pretty improbable. This pack is pretty stacked though, so like the red player is going to take the Goblin Guide. The green player has a lot of options, and Noxious Gearhulk I don't think should be one of them. And if they're, I think Vampire Lasser is probably the last pick in this pack, but if we can wheel the Gearhulk, we'll be pretty happy. So I'm going to take Jace the Mind Sculptor. Gideon, ally of Zendikar, is very good. We're not really light on win conditions though at the moment, and I really want the strat planning. Um, but maybe Gideon's just better. We're only in pack 2, or sorry, we're in pack 3, so we're pretty likely to hit more cantrips, and maybe someone doesn't take this, so I'll take the Gideon. It's a little bit of a risk, but sure. Grave Titan's very good. Just another way of winning the game. We're like a pretty proactive control deck here. I like picking up more fixing. Alright, yeah, I like where this deck is. It's like super aggressive, very tap out control. We could use another Wrath. That's something that we're missing. This is bad. This to me tells me that green is super open. All these cards are really good, especially Boreal Druid. I don't know why anyone would take anything over that, so I'll get rid of that, I suppose. Lower Enforcer's fine. Loyal Cathar is fine. Actually, I might just take the Grafted War Gear here. It's definitely worse to play against. So, like, the question is, do I hate draft something to, like, counteract aggro, or do I just take the card that allows me to also play pretty reasonably against aggro? I think probably this is the correct pick. Delta is an easy pick here. Even though there's a top, I think Delta helps us fix our mana really well. I think that's invaluable. So this is a 4-man draft, and to some degree 4-man drafts are just way more on the rails drafting than other drafts. That's necessary. Elspeth is fine. I'm not like super amped about it. I really, really need more cantrips. I don't have a single cantrip right now. Which, you know, I did pass the opportunity on one, so it's kind of my fault, but well, Counterspell's pretty good. Yeah, we just don't have like a ton of cheap interaction. We don't have a ton of, there's one. Okay, cantrip, easy, windmill slam, since we need several more in order to make this feel decent. I'll take Mom. I don't really want to play against it. I'll take Maverin. Alright, so this is pack 5 out of 6. Essence Extraction is fairly good. So is Hangerback Walker, but I do like having a little bit of life gain. This is double black, though, and we don't have a ton of black fixing. So it might be better to just go Hangerback Walker. You could also just take Evolving Wilds to help smooth our mana a little bit. We only have 5 sources of fixing. But outside of those things, we only have 12 playables right now. Well, we can play these, though. So we've really got 15 potential playables. I'll take the Evolving Wilds reluctantly. I think that Essence Extraction probably comes back, so I'll take that. Sphinx, oh, Damnation's really good. We do need another Wrath, and that's like, we desperately need that. Okay, so Watergrave versus Shimmer possibility. Normally I would lean toward the Watergrave, but I really want the Shimmer. We don't have a lot of cantrips in this current deck, and, well, I want more. Godless Shrine is good. Crux of Fate is decent, as well as Night Incarnate, so we're getting some of the Black Wraths, and I think that likely one of those wheels. Maybe not, though. Essence Extraction and Hangerback Wield. That's probably incorrect. I think that Hangerback Walker should have been taken. I'm just going to pick that up here because it's actually kind of annoying to play against. And it's also just very good. So Sphinx of the Lost Truth is pretty good. Ritual Suit versus Ultimate Price. I do like Ultimate Price. We don't have a lot of early interaction, and it's probably one of the best spot removal spells since this is a monocolored cube. And thus almost all of the threats are monocolored. But I do think Ritual of Suit is just kind of where we want to be. We want to be able to answer aggro very well. And we do have good fixing for our black cards. We are at the point where maybe we don't have enough to support Vidalcan Shackles very well. I know I put a Stomping Ground in there. We should cut that. Oh, Crux of Fate came back. Awesome. Yeah, so we ended up getting a lot of those kinds of things. Vraska's Contempt ends up being really good too. We're actually leaning more into black now than we were into white. So if we add in Ritual of Suit and cut like Elspeth, and we cut Quarantine Field, and we add in Vraska's Contempt maybe, um, add in Crux of Fate, right? So now we've got 18 playables. We can play more white, but it's going to really strain our mana base. Really, I don't really want this 4-drop that much. I would really like a 3-drop version of this card, but I'll take it. It's probably a sideboard card for me. Verdant Catacombs is another way of fixing our mana, and I think that we could use more of that. I think any of these is fine, but I'm not like super amped about them. Dead of Winter is probably the best one, but I'm just going to take that. Fatal Push, Cast Out. Cast Out's pretty good at dealing with I like the Cast Out can cycle. I think that's a big plus to it. I do like Fatal Push. I'm just going to take... Maybe Cast Out's more likely to wheel. Kind of tough. We don't have a lot of early game stuff, so I'm going to take this, actually. It's slightly better. Vivid Meadow is decent fixing. Walk the Plank is decent removal, since it kills anything in the cube. Take Walk the Plank there. End Hostilities is another good. Okay, so Dead of Winter. We can almost just be blue-black, but we don't have enough finishers. Alright, so we're at 21 playables. We can certainly add in some more of the white, the double white stuff. Oh, we've got Hangerback Walker too. So now we're at 22. We really needed more card draw. I'm relatively upset with the amount of card draw that I saw. But hey. So we can either go Vraska's Contempt or Elspeth, or we could go End Hostilities, but I don't really think we need another one of those things. We could also play Quarantine Field, which is like fairly reasonable. It's like another late game, like really big late game thing. Kind of like that. So if we... So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 black. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 white. So we're pretty evenly split between everything right now, which is not ideal. We could cut Face Fetters for Vraska's Contempt. We could cut Mind Control for Vraska's Contempt, because it's cheaper. But I mean, the tempo swing granted by Mind Control is just huge. I don't know if we really want the Dalkin Shackles. That may just not be good enough. But we don't really have, like, any ramp, right? So our turn 3 is often going to be wasted, unfortunately, because we just didn't find any mana rocks. So let's just see what happens if we go... So we have 2 fetches, Stomping Ground and Verdant Catacomb. Or sorry, Verdant Catacombs and Polluted Delta. Polluted Delta can find Godless Shrine, Hollowed Fountain, and Sunken Hollow. Verdant Catacombs can find Godless Shrine and Hollowed Fountain, so we don't really need Canopy Vista type effects. We can play the Evolving Wilds, we can play Underground River, and Vivid Creek. So that makes most of our fixing fairly good. We could cut Sphinx of Lost Truths if we wanted to. Like, if we cut Sphinx and the Dalkin Shackles and just run another Wrath and Elspeth, then we're more white and, like, kind of less blue. But then it's like, why run Counterspell even? Like, could we just be white-black? But I don't think that's very good. I think this is fine. We just got to figure out how we're going to do our mana. And I think, generally speaking, blue and black are more important in the early game with this deck. And white doesn't need as much fixing. It's just got less double things that I want to cast early on. So I'm going to go ahead and just go... No, well, we can just do 3 of each. That's actually fine. I don't think we need to do anything else that's kind of special aside from that. I mean, we could cut... I think we probably should cut Vidalcan Shackles. It's just not going to get there with the amount of fixing that we have. I think we'd be better off with either Elspeth or Vraska's Contempt. Or just End Hostilities. I kind of like Vraska's Contempt. Alright. So that means that maybe I should cut an island and add a swamp. Okay. So I think we're good to go with this. Let's jump over to Cockatrice. Alright, let's see what happens. Yeah, this hand is good. You can certainly play it. Alright, let's see what happens from here. Just gonna cast Duress. Let's take Chandra. That seems terrible to play against for me, so then I'll go ahead and play Verdant Catacombs. It's a little aggressive. Right, so now our Mu Yanling is relatively well protected by the sheer nature of my opponent having cast a spell for no reason, really. So I'm just going to go ahead and cast it. Uptick her to 4. If my opponent has like a Searing Spear and then the Arc Trail, that's fine. It's like a lot of damage they're spending on the Planeswalker and not on my face, which I'm super okay with. And plus next turn, you know, I've got Shimmer Possibility available to me. And Walk the Plank as a removal spell as well if they play something that I want to get rid of. So, Okay. Do you have a Lightning Bolt? No. Confused. I'm just going to go ahead and play Shimmer Possibility. I'm going to take this Path to Exile. That looks really quite good. Move the rest of the bottom. And then I will play a Plains. There's a world in which I just downtick Mu Yanling Uh, there's not a ton that really deals with that in red. There's like Flame Slash. Sure, let's do it. Just a card that wasn't really worth keeping around, to be honest. Alright. It looks like some sort of like Gruul deck with tons of burn. So like mostly red with like splash of green for no reason. Alright, so this is going to be an Inferno Titan. It's going to probably kill my Hangerback Walker. And then I just path it, and that should be a good game. We've also got, I can actually just like walk the plank it actually. I think that's maybe slightly even better, to be honest. Since it's a sorcery speed, and I can actually deal with that threat at sorcery speed, and then path is an instant. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Alright. Yeah, I didn't do the lands in the sideboard, which is maybe erroneous. So unfortunately, my opponent conceded the match after losing there. Yeah, we'll get into why bad player with bad attitude makes bad deck concedes match a little bit later. So with that, let's just head into our round two. Alright, so kept our opening hand. It's quite good. I'm just going to play Pluto Delta. Alright, so I think I want Godless Shrine here. It kind of stinks. I would have really liked to been able to cast Dread Return, or I mean Dead of Winter, next turn in order to deal with my opponent's board more effectively. Okay, so they played a fetch land here, so I probably wouldn't have been able to do it anyway, but it would have been nice to have that option. Alright, so I'm going to take 3. I guess my real option here is to... Yikes. We're going to need to Faithless Fetters, like, now. I guess I can block Fatal Push something, and then Face Fetters this. Yeah, that seems good. So I'll play Swamp, go. Yikes. At least I can kind of combat that. Alright, so I just have to play Face Fetters here. And I will hit Nissa, say go. We've got a Grave Titan to kind of swing things back in our favor. We can also Dead of Winter his board. Fine Elves, Hierarch. Oh, wow. Oh, I'm going to get my opponent so good here. Okay, 1, 2, sure. Alright, so we want to cast Duress. See what's up there. Yup. That's pretty good. And then we get to go get you. And then I will cast Dead of Winter. And play an island. Your turn. So if I draw a land, we get to play Grave Titan, and that should just end it. It's pretty hard for my opponent to beat that, I think. Myriad's Guile, sure. Draw a card. Nice. So they can play Thragtusk next turn. And that should be it. Just so much. I mean, Grave Titan is basically the Black Elspeth's Sun's Champion. It's a card that just very easily takes over games, and it's just going to be very hard for my opponent to deal with. So, unless they've got like a ultimate price, which they could have, or like a Noxious Gearhulk, which they could have, they don't, it seems. Okay. Okay. That's fine. I'm still pretty far ahead on this board, I think. I mean, my opponent does have the Guile, so they're going to have better top decks. In general, mid-range has slightly better top decks than control, I think, in terms of card quality on average. That's the whole goal of mid-range, is to really mitigate bad draws and have like consistently good ones, at least in theory. Okay, Rishkar is decent. Alright. So I'll go ahead and shrink this thing. Say go. We can also like Crux of Fate next turn if he like overcommits, and then just kind of sit behind this Mu Yanling. Like if I get, Mu Yanling to ult, I just win, right? So that's something that I can consider as an option here. That's pretty spoopy. Yikes. Oh, he's upticking? That seems wrong. Yeah, that's not very good, I think. We really should have like made something fight my Mu Yanling. Would have been a lot better. Just blow everything up here. So I counters the 1, make an elemental. So now he's got to like play something that can fight the air elemental minus the Vivian, and then we still have our Mu Yanling, so that's pretty decent. I can kill the Vivian then if it doesn't like kill this air elemental. Yeah, alright. It's pretty good. So now I need to find a removal spell. Or not. Yeah, I mean, this is the problem of having not many cantrips, right? So this is why cantrips are esteemed as good. It's because they help you filter your draws so that they're better on average. I mean, thus far my draws have been fine, but not great. Okay, you did it. There's a cantrip. Alright, so I guess we'll just do it like this. Ooh, that's pretty good. I really like Gideon Jura here. I mean, the other ones are fine. Gideon Jura is just really good. Just eat the Gear Hulk. Yeah, I like that a fair bit. And it like puts a lot of immediate pressure on my opponent. Okay. It's fairly good. Maybe we draw a path, or not that, but sure. Well, we can fog it. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, yeah, so, a big portion of what I've modeled uh, my green section after is like a true mid-range deck, which is like actually pressuring me here because it's got a consistently low curve. It's able to do what it's trying to do consistently, especially with Miri's Guile. That's been not great for me, but okay, Courser. Okay. If I do nothing, I go to 2. I think I need to do Jace. So that counters to 2. Bounce this, and then Ritual of Suit. Which doesn't seem great, but I mean, that's a place where, Volcanic would have been so much better than Jace, right? He just, like, stonewalls everything and says, good luck. Well, I guess, do the counters add on to it being a 0-3? Are these, like, 0-3s with 4 +1/+1 counters? I don't remember that ruling. But they would lose the ability of having the counters? Is that an ability? No. I don't know. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm just going to draw 3 here. Okay, so unfortunately, this opponent had to leave in order to go to work. And, we didn't really get to see the outcome of that game. I think that the counter spell to counter the Vidaris Gearhulk would have been quite good. We shuffle away a couple lands there, and then we Telling Time, which could potentially find us a solution for this Garuk problem that we have. If we were able to get a solution for that problem, I think our probability of winning the game is fairly high, even though we sacrificed the Jace with that play. But it's a really tight match, and I'm going to go into some of the things from a design perspective as well as from a gameplay perspective that made that occur. So this is my cube, right? Now, from the perspective of many people on Reddit, they complain about planeswalkers and they complain about too much removal, right? So I have a pretty decent amount of removal. I've got several different types of murders. I've cut Terror actually because it's just a little bit too it's got too many restrictions. So I'm trying to run as many universal kinds of removal spells as I can that don't have like silly text on them that reduces your ability to actually cast them and have them resolve. So, by the way, this has an error. There's 2 Sarkons in this cube, and that is going to be rectified soon.
So that's not supposed to be like that. But anyway, there's a decent amount of removal. But if we take a look at the draft, we can count several different times in which players passed removal that they shouldn't have. So let's go ahead and open that up. All right, so I got past duress, and so like pack 1, pick 3, path to exile. In this draft, there was a blue-white aggro deck, a green-black mid-range deck, and a mono-red aggro deck. The mono-red aggro deck could very easily have been red-white aggro. The green-black deck could have very easily been Abzan. I don't think that Path is necessarily the highest pick in the world, but when you look at this pack and you assume, okay, so I got the Path to Exile, the blue-white player took the Jace over, one of these other cards in here that would probably better support blue-white aggro. We know that it didn't take the Flicker Wisp because the Flicker Wisp ended up in the sideboard of the mono-red deck. So, not that Path is like the best card in the world, but it is certainly a card that does fuel those kinds of decks and would be very good in an aggro deck or a mid-range deck. We keep going. Duress somehow wheeled in a pack that, let's take a look at the pack that had Duress in it. It had Spined Thopter, which I think also wheeled. Miri's Guile, Syncopate, Winds of Wrath. It's up against decent competition, but again, we're going to get into that mono-red deck and what its sideboard looks like, and that if it were a red-black deck, it probably would have been more successful. Not because monocolored aggro isn't good, but because they seem to have just, like, it seems like it didn't have enough red in the pool for whatever reason. I run a ton of red, so, but here's Fire Imp, right? So Fire Imp is another removal spell. This spell wheeled once, and then wheeled again, and I got it, right? So if you're mono red and you see a 3-drop that kills a creature on ETB, kills like a good portion of the creatures in the cube on ETB, that seems like a card that I'd want in my mono red deck. Going into pack 2. So we've got a Char, New Yanling, etc., all in this opening pack. So Mind Control, we take not a removable spell there. There's an Arc Trail that gets picked up by the mono red player. But again, this card wheels, right? So if we scroll down, if I remember right, oh no, it didn't wheel. The Jackal Pup did, which means to me that, that the aggro player took whatever they took first. We don't know what that is. And then they picked Arc Trail, or they picked Arc Trail first and then didn't pick the Jackal Pup when it came back around, which doesn't make any sense. Again, I'll show you that deck list in a minute. But here's a Char that's just hanging out in a pack, right? So these aren't in my control colors, but would be great in a Jund deck or in a Red X aggro deck, right? So I'm going through this for the purpose of showing how, one, all these removal cards are just so good in a multitude of different decks, right? Incinerate and Volcanic Hammer, they opt as both burn and removal, which means they're great in red-based decks. As you keep going along, you see these moments where Face Fetters, that wheels, which, granted, it probably doesn't belong in an aggro deck, but here, Incinerate and Volcanic Hammer both wheel in a pack that has virtually no other good red stuff. It's got Fiery Confluence, which is fine, but Incinerate and Volcanic Hammer are much more efficient, and while they're not necessarily exciting, I think that they're cards that I'm probably taking over Fiery Confluence in that pack. Down to the next pack, pack 4, right? So not really any removal in that pack, that first pack. We got a Lightning Strike, so let's see if that wheels, right? Counterspell, other things in this, not really any removal. Right, the Lightning Strike didn't wheel, which is good. But here we have an Arbor Elf last, right? So this is the second time we've seen a Mana Dork wheel. We have the Arbor Elf, and then earlier we have a Boreal Druid that wheeled. Those things shouldn't really be wheeling. And they shouldn't be last picks for sure if there's a green player at the table, which there was. We played against them, right? And I think overall the green player did a fairly decent job constructing their deck, but here's like a last pick Thornling, right? I think Thornling is... Take a look at the pack the Thornling first showed up in. What pack was it in? Here it is. Alright, so we've got Thornling versus a bunch of nothing. So versus Horizon Canopy. Horizon Canopy's fine, but I think you could potentially just run one less land if you're running all those mana dorks and run the Thornling instead. Thornling is an excellent finisher, and it's definitely a card that I generally want. Here we get down into some more, or pack 5. So you've got Essence Extraction is your only removal spell on this pack, and it wheels. You've got the next pack. We've got Damnation and a Glorybringer. Let's see if those wheel. I know the Essence Extraction wheels because I thought about picking it. Here we've got Shimmer Possibility, Incendiary Flow, Ultimate Price, right? We take the Shimmer Possibility over it, and Ultimate Price somehow wheels. So this black removal, this spot removal, right? I ended up taking a Wrath because I thought that was probably better, but it ended up being that I could have probably taken the Ultimate Price and been a little bit better off. I didn't expect the Crux of Fate to wheel. But this Ultimate Price should have been picked up by the green-black midrange deck earlier. The rest of that pack doesn't really have a whole ton of stuff that I remember being good comparatively. So you get Woodland Cemetery. That's probably the pick for them. That's probably what they chose. But Ultimate Price should have been like pretty close. Yeah. So we get to this next pack. I take the Vraska's Contempt mostly because it gains life and it deals with Planeswalkers, which are troublesome permanent for control, right? And I have lots of ways of clearing up a board. I've got tons of creature interaction. So I took the Vraska's Contempt there. We move down a little bit. There's Dead of Winter, Inquisition of Kozilek. We got Fatal Push, Cast Out, right? Walk the Plank, Radiant Flames. So we've got a decent amount of stuff. Like Walk the Plank moved for, so everyone saw this before I did, which means that the green-black midrange deck saw it. That means that the red, mono-red aggro deck that could have been red-black or could have been red-white saw this. So this is just me looking at the draft. I'm not saying that, I don't think that removal spells are super high picks for a lot of decks, but I do think that many of these decks in an environment with tons of removal could have done better with removal. The reason is that, if you're playing your early turn, someone plays something that's in the way of you playing aggro, right? And you want to destroy their big creature so you can get in combat damage. Ultimate Prizes, Walk the Planks, etc. are going to help you with that. Same thing is true of midrange decks. Midrange decks are going to want to break board stalls by killing creatures. So, by not taking those removal spells, they're taking something else. And if you're splashing for black, I don't really see a reason to splash for black where you're not taking duress and you're not taking removal spells. Now, if we take that same information and apply it to our round 1 opponent, right? This is the deck that our round 1 opponent sent me. They have 13 lands, which I think is a little bit under what you should be running in an aggro deck in general. I think generally like 14 to 15 is a reasonable place in an aggro deck that curves out to 3, like CMC of 3, right? This deck curves out higher than that, and we'll organize that by mana cost here in a second. But this entire deck is only red stuff, right? But over here, we've got Vivid Crag, Vivid Meadow, Sulphurous Springs, Rugged Prairie, Carplusian Forest, and City of Brass, all of which are significantly worse than just a basic mountain in a deck that's mono red. So the mana base is awful, but what you do see is that you've got Vivid Meadow, Rugged Prairie, right? Those are in City of Brass. So you've got at least 3 fixers for a red-white. Oh, and the Vivid Meadow, too. So you've got 4 fixers for white. For black, you've got Sulphurous Springs, Vivid Crag, you've got City of Brass, and then if you're really desperate, you could run the Vivid Meadow, but I don't really recommend that. So, you got 3 ways of fixing for black, and in your sideboard, you've got Carnophage, Eternal Taskmaster, Griff the Aetherborn, and Spawn of Mayhem. So those 4 cards um, would really help this be more of a red-black aggro deck. Had this person taken Duress or taken Ultimate Price or whatever as the things went on, as the packs went on, I think that they would have had a slightly more optimized experience. And then they took Fiery Confluence over um, Incendiary Strike, Incendiary, whichever one it was. It was another one that's basically just Volcanic Hammer, but instant speed, right? So essentially, this deck errs in terms of what it's chosen to play as its mana curve. Let's take a look at its curve. Right, so it's a 13 land deck trying to curve out to Inferno Titan and 2 5-drops. That makes no sense. It's got a Guardian Idol, which I think is an easy cut, because it's just ramp in a deck that's not trying to play ramp. And if it is trying to play mid-range, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to splash white for some of these better mid-range cards like Angel of Invention, like Brimaz, etc. So if it's trying to be mid-range, I think it should center its curve around 3 a little bit more, because Spine Thopter doesn't make sense in mid-range. That's an aggro card. It's a 2/1 flyer that pings or like shocks you, right, on ETB, and it'd be much, much better as a Brimaz in your mid-range deck. So I think that either there's so also let's talk about 1-drops. In an aggro deck, I want like 7 to 9 at a minimum 1 mana aggro creatures. The reason for that is because as aggro, you need to take advantage of the earlier turns. This deck has 2 1-mana creatures and then a Burst Lightning and a top, right? That means that most of the time your turn 1 is going to be wasted, which means that you're not going to be able to really seize tempo early on, which is the whole premise of playing aggro, is that you're sacrificing card advantage for tempo, and you're using tempo as a way of getting ahead and then closing out the game before your opponent can do something. So in order to do that, you need a plethora of options at 1 mana. This deck did not get there, which, I want to remark is not a fault of the cube. If you take a look at the cube, we've got 13 red 1-mana creatures, we've got 12 black 1-mana creatures, and 14 or 15 1-mana white creatures. There's a ton of options for aggro decks in the aggro colors to successfully get the cards that they need. However, that clearly wasn't, either that wasn't in the pool, or this drafter just chose not to take them. I think it wasn't in the pool based on what I saw. In my draft, it just didn't seem like aggro for whatever reason. It's a 4-man pod, so you see less of the cube. Seeing about half of it, there's a probability that you don't really see the stuff you need to support aggro. I don't know why there's 2 Goblin Bannerets here, too. That's incorrect as well. So clearly this needs to be updated. This is just anyway. But anyway, the things like Hangerback. Hangerback wheeled to me. That's a card that I'm pretty happy to play in aggro because it's resilient, comes down on turn 2, and it's a mana sink that can pressure my opponent. It's good at any point in the game. It's good in mid-range. I don't know why the green-black mid-range player kind of skipped on that, But then if you look at his sideboard, he's got Aethersphere Harvester in the board, which I think is just 100% erroneous. I don't want to be curving up to Inferno Titan in this deck. I want to be playing things that are cheap and resilient and kill my opponent pretty fast, right? So there's just a lot of deck building errors that I think probably resulted from some draft errors. I think, there's also a decent amount of white stuff here. There's Tamik, there's Ranger Captain Eos, Precinct Captain, Knight of Holy Nimbus, there's Flicker Wisp, there's Brimaz. Angel of Invention's not really aggro, but if you wanted to play red-white mid-range, that was surely an option. But this deck just doesn't know what it wants to do, and that's why it was so unsuccessful. My opponent, after this, rage quit, ignored me, and complained about, first they complained about how the cube doesn't support aggro well enough and how multicolored aggro should be better, etc., etc., which is just, that's fine. That's an opinion to have. But, as I explained the options in my cube, they grew frustrated that I explained why the cube is the way it is and ignored me. Which, to me, in tandem with a person who rage quits after one game in a match where they clearly misconstructed their deck, and like misread the draft, communicates to me that this player has a bad attitude and isn't able to accept fault for whenever they make mistakes, and that leads to not improving. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the green-black deck, as much as I know of it. I assume they took the Woodland Cemetery, so I assume they have at least 14 lands. I'm pretty sure this deck ran like 16 to 17 lands, because he had 11 cards left in his library, and it seems pretty improbable that he drew 13 of his lands in the first 30 cards, 29 cards, if he doesn't have more lands in the bottom. So my guess is he's on like 16 to 17. I think he could be on 15 with this deck. But I also think that, Boreal Druid being skipped, that was not good. Skipping on Llanowar Elves, not good. This deck could have been better, but I think overall this one's reasonable, right? He's using his splash effectively. I think he's probably on too many fixing sources here. Like too heavily in black. We saw that be a problem when he was trying to, but unsuccessfully, able to cast Garruk Primal Hunter. He had 5 mana, he just didn't have triple green, which in a predominantly green deck shouldn't be that much of a problem. Which I think has to probably do with his mana. If we look at it, he's got, so this is from what we know, one, like even over here, we can see that he's running about 40% black sources in a deck that splashes Inquisition. You can cast Dismember without casting it for its mana cost, so, as far as we know, he doesn't really have that much reason to be running as much black fixing as he is. I think he could get by with just 5 sources, and right now he's on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right, 7 sources of black. I mean, he's really got 8 with Vivid Grow, but I think that's like fine because it's a green source. It's only disadvantages that comes in tapped, which like is not the worst thing, especially if we look at his curve. It looks like he didn't have a lot of 2-drops, so you can play that on turn 2. That's fine. You're not really wasting a mana. You're just improving your fixing. But I think he's probably on too many lands, and we see that be a result as when he's got his Mirri's Golem play, right? He was sacking lands to draw cards and then drawing another land and fetching, right? So we could see that in the gameplay. But overall, his deck is really good, and you can see why having a lot of removal actually makes the games interactive. My opponent played a lot of things and forced my hand to actually interact with them. A card like Deadbridge Goliath, right? That was a card that could potentially threaten me. Actually, on that last turn, if he didn't play Verdurous Gearhulk and he just played the Deadbridge Goliath Scavenge and just smacked my Jace, I can't counter that. Now he's just got a 7/7 on the board that I have to deal with, right? So if I don't draw Quarantine Field, Vraska's Contempt, or whatever, then I'm in a pretty bad position. So this is a position where everyone's always like, oh, well, there's that tension of not drawing the removal, but instead of being a tension caused by I don't run enough removal and a Baneslayer is like fairly good when I don't have a lot of removal, this is a situation where I had the removal for the original spell, and then it had the potential to come back and deal more damage to me, which could be, that could be a pretty big deal. So, because now it 2-for-1s me, and he gets to keep the Verdurous Gearhulk in hand, so now even if I Wrath his board and deal with the Garruk, I still have the Gearhulk to deal with. So that puts a lot of pressure on Control, and as you can see, it wasn't just one of those matchups where it's like, oh yeah, Control beats midrange because that's what Control does. Midrange really tested Control, and I think that the end result of that match could have gone either way. And that's a result of the design decisions I made to try to mitigate the rock, paper, scissors feeling of how Control plays against other decks, how midrange plays against other decks, how aggro plays against other decks. So, when we go over like the cube here, we can see in the choices that, there's a lot of cards like Herald of Torment. Bestow creatures, they potentially do more things. They're flexible, so they can just be a 3/3, or they can be something that you enchant something. When it gets removed, you still have a 3/3. So this resiliency actually makes it a lot harder for Control to be able to deal with the threats, right? So when decks are constructed fairly well, like we saw in the last game, I made mistakes in my draft too, which I can talk about. I shouldn't have taken Gideon over strategic planning. I should have read the draft and said, okay, I have not been past many blue cards, and so the strat planning probably isn't going to come back. Whether I assume someone else is on control or not, which I assumed someone wasn't at that point because I was getting past all kinds of other stuff, strat planning would have been an excellent card to pick up. And Gideon, I had a fair amount of win conditions, so even at that point in the draft. So I think that Gideon was probably a little bit greedy, a little bit too much falling into the vein of this is something that's tempo positive, it's proactive as a control deck, and that if I had strategic planning, I would have been more likely to get the cards I needed, and that makes a difference in the end result. As you saw, right, I was drawing lands or other things instead of the exact card I needed, and if I had strat planning, I'd be more likely to draw the exact card I needed, So these kinds of micro decisions in the draft can really make a difference whenever things are relatively close in terms of power level, and when you have to make a lot of different decisions. So with that said, I want to hear you guys' thoughts on where else I messed up in the draft. I know I messed up a few times, at least in my estimation, but I'd love to hear where you guys think I messed up. I also, want to hear feedback on the cube, provided it's civil. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.